Welcome back to the Cancering Show. I have two very special guests in the studio with me today. We're going to be talking about cancering over the summer. And my family is getting ready for our summer plans. School is almost out, and by the time this airs, school will be out. So I brought in two very special guests, Marian Pierce, who is just finishing the 5th grade, and Elizabeth Pierce, who's just finishing the 4th grade. Girls, tell us what you're doing this summer.
So for Memorial Day weekend, we're going to Kiowa.
To the beach.
And then for, I think June, we're going to camp. And then July, I'm doing soccer camp, track camp, and also this computer camp for my school.
What about you, Marian?
I'm doing 2 reading camps this summer, and I'm doing a softball camp. I'm doing babysitting camp. I'm also doing camp at Canoga in North Carolina. Same.
Awesome. Okay. If we had to think about injuries this summer, what are the things you're worried about?
Breaking my arm on the zip line.
That could happen. We're going to try not to.
I'm kind of scared of getting stung by a jellyfish because last summer we went to Kiowa and my mom, my sister, and my cousin all got stung by jellyfish and I didn't even get touched. I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, and over spring break, somebody got a really bad sunburn.
And it started peeling really badly.
Yeah, and somebody else got a rash from the ocean water. Yeah. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about for men and women who are having to do cancer treatment over the summer. Good job, ladies.
Yay, I was so slay.
I was so slay.
Cancer is just something that we all have to recognize, acknowledge, cope with, live with, struggle with, rage upon, crush, and even thrive with. This show is more than knowing and fighting or beating cancer. It's more than just relaying science, hope, and technology. Together, our purpose is to demystify cancer, take away as much fear out of the diagnosis, treatment, and process as we can, defeat its grip on our lives. This is The Cancering Show.
So the girls gave us just some examples of the things that can happen over the summer and in the sun or the sea. And I thought we should talk about that. I thought we should talk about what it means to be cancering over the summer, in particular related to avoiding injury or other problems. So first, let's talk about skincare and the sun. Number one, almost every chemotherapy makes your skin more sensitive and more susceptible to sunburn. So we really want every cancer patient to find a sensitive, non-toxic, probably mineral sunscreen that they're going to apply to any skin that might be exposed to the sun anytime you are outside. That includes for people who lose their hair with chemotherapy, applying that sunscreen to the top of your head. Now, a nice way to avoid extra sunscreen is to wear SPF protective clothing and hats. And those can be found in almost every outdoor venue or online to give you extra protection from the sun so that you don't feel like you need to use sunscreen over every part of your body. Other place that I've learned the hard way, the tops of your feet, if you're a flip-flop wearer or not wearing a closed-toed shoe, can be another place where you can get a really bad sunburn. And anytime we have a sunburn to the point of blistering and peeling, it actually could delay your treatment because of the need for that skin to heal. So we really want to avoid that. And there are chemotherapies that can cause blistering or peeling of the skin. So we want to make sure we don't get confused between sun damage and damage related to chemotherapy or chemotherapy toxicity. So very important to watch out for that while you're on chemotherapy. Next, let's talk about pools and water. So most of the time, ocean water is safe unless you have an open cut or sore. And same is true of chlorinated and saltwater pools. We do worry about hot tubs and hot water and the bacteria load that can be in those. We also worry about brackish water and warm, stagnant, fresh water. Those are the places where bacteria can be particularly high, particularly in the late part of the summer. So please do watch out for those bodies of water and avoid them if possible. And make sure in every circumstance not to go in those bodies of water with any sort of open cut or sore. Next, let's talk about head and hair care. So for people who lose their hair on their cancer treatment, a lot of times they're wearing a wig or head covering during the colder months. But most of my patients tell me that wigs are very hot, itchy, and they can get a lot of sweat and even break out on their scalp if they're wearing a wig frequently. So there's a lot of great alternatives to wigs, and the summer is the perfect time to explore some of those. So a baseball hat or a scarf, particularly one that is made out of a breathable, like cotton material, can really be a beautiful or fun alternative to a wig in those warmer months. We do still recommend that you wash your head or scalp with a gentle shampoo to keep that skin really clean and allow it to get completely dry, or even a hairdryer on cool until it's dry before applying a head covering so you don't get trapped water or sweat under a head covering. Next, let's talk about feet care. So a lot of times people are walking around barefoot in the summer, even walk around on the beach barefoot. And for any patients on cancer treatment, we worry not just about an injury to the bottom of the feet. We always think about diabetics and worry that there could be an injury that went unrecognized or became infected at the bottom of the feet, but also that additional friction, even walking on the beach for some chemotherapies, can lead to chemotherapy toxicity concentrated in the feet. And so we want to make sure that you are wearing shoes as much as possible. I'm not necessarily saying you have to wear shoes on the beach, but that you are not avoiding walking on uneven ground or hot concrete barefoot, particularly when you're on cancer treatment, because it can be a source for injury. Now let's think about a few specific situations where being on cancer treatment puts you at higher risk. First, I want to think about exercise or any strenuous activity out in the heat. We know that getting dehydrated in the summer and chemotherapy patients are at very high risk for heat stroke. So we want to make sure you're drinking tons of water. You also want to make sure you're alternating your water with electrolyte balanced drinks such as Gatorade or Propel, because we want to make sure that you aren't just drinking only water, but that you're replacing the salts as well. So very important to stay very well hydrated and to get out of the heat after anything that results in a significant sweat. Lastly, do look for fatigue as a marker of dehydration. When you are feeling fatigued, do make sure to add lots of water or replacement fluids as part of your treatment for that fatigue. Next, let's talk about vacation. So being on vacation is fantastic, and we do want our cancering patients to still get out and enjoy time with their family and friends. The main things that we think about for vacation is making sure that you have some of your medical records or medical information with you, that you remember to refill all of your medications before you leave, and that you take those with you. And that if you have any problems, you still want to start by calling your primary medical team and let them know the problem that you're having. They might be able to help you over the phone. Some places are able to still get you in for a virtual visit, depending on both where you are and where they are. And they might direct you to a particular medical center and even call ahead to send your medical records. So always great to start with your own doctor at home before seeking medical attention out of town. Next, let's talk about gardening. So a lot of people are gardening more in the summer, and we want to make sure that you are thinking about protecting yourself and your hands from injury. So gardening injuries actually can result in significant infections, whether that's a sharp tool injury that might have soil on it, or an injury related to poison ivy, thorns, or other sharp objects out in the garden. Any of these injuries can be associated with a much higher risk for bacterial infection. We recommend that you get inside, get it really cleaned out, apply an antibacterial of some kind, whether that is hydrogen peroxide, Neosporin, or even alcohol, to clean it out really good, and then get it bandaged and covered before you go back into the garden. One great way to avoid injury in the garden is to always wear tough gloves and even those new garden sleeves that are very breathable, but avoid some of those extra scratches and injuries when you're outside in short sleeves. Let's talk about fishing and cancering. So there's a couple of specific things to think about with fishing, some of which we've already mentioned. First, avoiding sun damage or sunburn while you're out fishing, making sure you're staying well covered. 2, avoiding dehydration. The time can pass and you can lose a lot of what we call insensible losses, that just the evaporation of sweat means you lose a lot of more water when you're out on a boat than you realize, because you might be cooled by the breeze from the boat and not notice that you haven't really had a lot to drink. And 3, when we are thinking about fishing, we also think about injury, whether that's with cleaning the fish or even a hook or other related injury. Be very careful to avoid these injuries. Maybe even have somebody else do that work for you so you're not cutting your hands on the gills, always wearing gloves, those types of things. And lastly, this brings me to the last topic that I wanted to talk about, which is seafood and other foodborne illnesses and picnics. So patients who are on chemotherapy with a lower immune system can be at much higher risk for foodborne illness, and it's not really the one that we think about when we worry about food poisoning. A lot of people don't think about that when they relate to chemotherapy. We know that we tell pregnant women to avoid uncooked seafood, and that applies to our chemotherapy patients as well. But there's a lot of things that might be undercooked or have sat out too long, which can provide additional risk. So a couple of those that we think about: cold cuts that have sat out for a long time, or picnic where there's been, say, a potato salad or another mayonnaise-based salad that's been out in the heat. All of those can have a risk for bacteria load that would not affect a healthy individual, but could affect a patient on chemotherapy, and unfortunately can cause life-threatening sepsis and even death. So we strongly caution you about those picnic-related foods, particularly if it's out in the heat. Stick to fresh foods like fresh vegetables, or really hot foods that have been heated to steaming, which have a much lower bacterial count. Since we are on the coast of Alabama, I can't talk about this without talking about oysters specifically. I love raw oysters. A lot of people out there do. I was raised with the old adage not to eat raw oysters in months that don't have an R in them, and I know a lot of people still follow that rule. But in particular, we want to say that consumption of raw oysters of any variety can have a higher bacterial load and can lead to very serious illnesses. So we really do recommend, when you are on chemotherapy or anything that lowers your immune system, that you avoid raw oysters and other uncooked seafoods. Summer is an amazing time. Obviously, I have school-aged kids, so we think of summer as a time for great fun, but it's true for everybody. It's warm outside, there's a lot of outdoor activities, and a lot of families getting together, and a lot of travel. So all of these things are things we want you to do while you're cancering. We just want you to take a little extra time to think about how it might be different now that you are receiving cancer treatment, and how to make sure that you have all the supplies you need and the support with your family and caretakers to overcome these minor difficulties. I hope you have a great time out there. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, keep cancering. Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to submit your questions at www.cancering.com. We're here for all of those questions, and we'll get you the answers. This show is brought to you by the University of South Alabama Mitchell Cancer Institute. MCI is a cutting-edge cancer research and patient center built to fight cancer smarter in Mobile and Baldwin County, Alabama. Our researchers and clinicians focus daily on the struggle against cancer, serving a potential catchment population of more than 4.1 million people, with a singular focus of advancing cancer diagnosis, treatment, and prevention throughout the Gulf Coast and beyond, with science, technology, and hope. Want to know more about the Mitchell Cancer Institute? Visit us at usamci.com or search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mitchell Cancer Institute is a member of USA Health. To learn more about all of our hospitals, clinics, and services, visit usahealthsystem.com.